Hey everybody, it is Anne coming to you live from Reaper Miniatures. As you can tell, I'm not at home today. Oh, but yes, here I am. Sorry that we're late. Kiri had moments this morning. I tried to leave early and it just never works. Ah, well. So how are y'all today? Hi everybody. Hello, hello, hello. I see Jared and Quindy and Freestyle and Coos and Chronico. Hey. Good morning. Good morning. So today we're going to see if I'm even up to painting this model because we're doing fine detail. And when I stopped and looked at the sucker, I'm like, wow, that's difficult even for me to do, the level of detail on this figure. It was one of the free figures from earlier this year. It's the Elf Mage. So we're going to try it and see how the curlicues on her dress go. And hope that my brush control is up. It's Collins today, Kaz, instead of Justin. Justin had to wait at home for a appliance delivery, so Collins is filling in.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
So we're getting ready to have a fun time.
We are going to have a fun time, yes. Especially if I make mistakes. But I don't mind making mistakes in front of you guys. Then you get to see how I fix them with much aplomb. I am never rattled. Anything I do, I can fix. That doesn't mean that I don't curse a lot about it when I'm at home, but... Good morning. Yes, Rings, we get a Collins Day today.
Hey, Rings.
Collins Day. Awesome. All right, well, let's just go into it then, Collins.
Before we get started, Anne, don't you have a Patreon that you would like to tell people about?
Oh, do you want? I usually wait till the end, but
okay.
I can, yeah, usually I wait till the end or kind of toward the endish of the stream. But don't worry, I'll remember.
Okie dokie.
Yay.
So here we go, moving on over.
All right, moving on over. Oh, boy. All right, so what we're going to do is these crazy things today. The crazy things. You guys have, a lot of you have this model, I am certain. So this is the Elf Mage. Let me get her little card. Anthanel. She's not named after me. I'm not that skinny yet, nor do I have hair that long. I was never able to grow hair down to my butt. That's like a genetic thing. I know people who can. I'm very jealous of them. But yes, sculpted by the awesome Bobby Jackson, but we can cuss him out a little bit looking at these tiny curlicues. But I'm going to try to paint these little tiny curlicues. Oh, Freestyle says increase the gain on your mic, Collins. Yeah, you guys don't have to hear Collins.
Yeah, you guys don't need to worry about me. I usually just talk quietly. You know, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, well, you're lucky for every night.
You guys will be all right.
Yeah, you're going to be all right. All right, so I'll put one coat on this. I'm doing green today. I decided since she's elfy.
I'm worried about our focus, Ian.
Okay. Well, there we go. I can drop it down a little bit.
We'll stick wherever's comfortable.
I'm probably going to be in this area right here, so we probably do need a little bit more focus. I thought I was going to be painting lower, but when I get to my comfy station... Oh, sorry. So I don't hurt my back, we must shrink Anne. Yeah, probably going to be around here.
All right, now I'm going to shift it backwards.
Collins is adjusting us. Yay! So yeah, it looks better on the monitor. Thanks, Collins. All right, so my base coat here is actually one of my favorite greens these days. For those of you who wonder...
Thank you very much for that sub.
Oh, yay, a sub. Yay, Beowulf, great, woohoo! So we are tracking subs for my show now, because when we get to 30, we're going to do a AMA, where you guys can put your questions in at Questionable Anne channel on the Reaper Discord, and I will run through as many of them as I can. So once we hit 30 for the month, we will schedule that AMA. So thank you, Beowulf. You have subbed toward us you've subbed us toward that goal. Awesome.
Do you know how many we have right now?
Justin was keeping track yesterday, and I don't know, but he should. If you want me to keep a hash mark tally, I can.
Because I have a tracker of one. There are a plethora of sticky notes over here with a plethora of numbers.
All right. Well, I'm gonna just if you want to keep hashtags, or I can keep hashtags just for this stream. Then we can give them to Justin. He can total it out. There were quite a few yesterday, though. There were over 10.
All right, awesome. Well, I will keep track, and that way you don't have to worry about it.
Oh, okay, cool. That works. 14-ish, says Magnetic Gumby.
Oh, the classic-ish. Love that.
So, yeah, we are doing Ancient Oak. Ta-da! And we are also mixing it with Naga Green. So if you are looking for a nice kind of a little bit more toward neutral green that's not too bright but still has a decent amount of saturation in it and looks very pretty as a dark green, and then you highlight it up with Naga Green, you mix these two colors. You'd never think so, ancient oak is so grayed out and definitely bluish and completely different than this really vibrant Naga green. But when you mix the two, you get a very pretty dark green. So there we go. You want to say it was 13 yesterday? It's somewhere in that neighborhood. I'm sure Justin has a tally. Magnetic Gumby. We'll just keep it, and if Justin seems inclined to lose it, then I will have to take over and do it myself.
We'll just hit 30 today and not worry about it. All right, chat. Challenge.
But yeah, so my first base color here, and since I'm close in, since this is a very small figure, you guys can't see my palette, but the color is like this. So it's a very pretty dark green. And what you do to get that is you mix 2 drops of ancient oak with 4 drops of Naga green. And I really like this color as a dark green because it is a little bit muted, so you can use it with so many different things. No, not green stuff, actual green. Green, the color of green stuff. So there you go. Although actually when I mix my green stuff, Kuroniko, I mix it with more yellow in it. So this is actually not the perfect color of it. 30 subs, Gren No Cookies. 30 subs will trigger us scheduling an AMA with me where I answer all the questions that you've dropped into Questionable and channel on the Reaper Discord. Oh, you remember hearing us halfway? It was somewhere in the lower teens. Yeah, it was somewhere between 12 and 15. But Justin will have the total. But yeah, that's what we're doing for quote-unquote giveaways, Gren. I announced it yesterday, but we figured that it was more in theme with the show, since this show is all about knowledge, and free knowledge at that, that the subs then are not only a vote that says you really like my show and you want me to keep doing it, but also they're a vote for the AMA. So that way I can run through all the questions. Some questions may be too complicated for me to address in a single stream, or they might be more the kind of thing that you'd want to base a show on. So I reserve the right to skip those and address them at some point in the future. But yeah, you can ask questions about me, about Reaper, about as much as I can answer any questions about Reaper. Reaper history might be more like it, although Ed is really the one for that. My dog, anything that I do, paint line development, mixing paints, anything you want.
There's a wealth of knowledge inside that brain. So
yes, exactly. So I challenge you to get at it all because you guys haven't even scratched the surface. I can still talk for half an hour and people say it's educational. Then obviously we need to talk more.
Twisted Omo, appreciate that sub.
Yeah, thanks, Twisted Oma. Awesome. That's 2 for the day. Thanks, Forever Night. Yeah, that was one where I get a lot of questions on them. Honestly, the best thing about clear minis is that they are, they're just, they're made to just come out and go on the table to represent a clear thing or a spirit thing or or an elemental thing. And you really don't need to do anything to them. But if you want to paint them, that is the way to do it. So for those who missed my stream yesterday, I paint the Water Weird. It's the translucent blue one. And so if you want tips for working with our translucents, you should go there. All right, let's look at this. This is crazy. Why did Bobby ever sculpt these tiny little spirals? Hi, Nomancy.
He was having fun in ZBrush, I bet.
I bet he was having fun in ZBrush. He's like, I need texture on this. I'm going to do random spirals. So, as with all, let me see, where's my walnut brown? Should I use brown liner? I might want to use a liner instead.
We got hosted by a couple people, so shout out to Steve T and Captain Madlove for those hosts.
Oh, thank you. Thank you guys for the host. Bobby is an agent of chaos, and the sculpt on this figure proves it. As you can see, those tiny little spirals, that's what we're going to do. So, all right, let's see here. I'm going to move these paints up a bit. I am going to move this down a bit. And I'm going to move my palette out of frame so I can get things out of the way and still leave them where you can kind of see them. Boop. All right, I think I'm going to use a liner actually over this. There are a couple ways you can tackle this. For all small details, no matter what it is, you need to really go for high contrast, which means your shadows have to be really dark and your highlights have to be really bright to bring out those tiny details. So I'm going to use blue liner because normally I would use brown liner on this for a green, but I do not have it on my plate, so that means blue liner is it. And I'm using a ratio of about 5:1 paint to water, just a little bit to get that blue liner to work. Now, you could just do a wash. It will take down, let's do a wash on this side. It will take down your green quite a bit though, so then it makes a little more work for you. It saves you work on one end and brings back more work on the other. That's the thing with washes, depending on what your goals are. I'm
excited to see how these little spirals turn out.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if they turn out like little mucky circles. Then Bobby will have defeated even me. My sealer is nothing wants to get in solution today.
Would you do this challenge with metallics as well?
Yeah, you could. It'd be harder to highlight them. It'd be harder to get that. Although with metallics, it's much easier to start really light and then. Oh, pardon me. Trying to find a pokey tool. Do we have a pokey tool?
Yes,
We do.
it's
Yay!
yeah.
With metallics, the easiest thing is just to start with a really bright light metallic, like new gold or one of the silvers, and then do a wash over it, and you'll find that it brings out the details a lot better, and you won't need to highlight too much. So it's actually harder to do with regular paint, I would say, Collins.
All right.
All right.
Always curious about how that works out when we're doing regular things and you can just apply some shiny to it.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that's true. Now, even with the wash, these spirals are tiny, so I don't know how it's going to go. We'll see. I'm mixing up my wash.
See an elven lady with her gold filigree circles walking around with her.
Oh, yeah,
pretty
bling.
staff.
Bling. Totally bling.
Something that took decades to make because it was by hand, cross-stitched.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah, you have a point. Maybe her auntie made it for her.
Or the little guy from the story with the thimble.
Oh, yeah.
Who made the gold thread?
Rumpelstiltskin?
Yeah, Rumpelstiltskin.
Doing it. All right, let me see. So the problem here now, if we're going to do a wash, is that I almost need to go a little bit lighter with this initial coat. And the reason for that is that washes look better the lighter of a color you start with. So let's add a little touch of white to my Naga and Ancient Oak mix and rebase coat that right side. And we're going to do it both ways because we got an hour. We can do this. So I'm going to actually, and this is actually a pretty color. It's definitely muted at this point, though. We've lost some of our brightness, so if we want it back, we'll have to glaze at the end. All right, so let's just put that down. And obviously, I want to have a pretty thin coat. And I don't even mind if it doesn't go in and fill in all these spirals. It actually works to my evil purposes, as the wash will probably show up a little better. All right, so now we made it that much lighter. And you can see I did it so light that it didn't even fill in those details. There are a couple of circles that are more shallow that it did fill in. So those are only going to get brought up on the washes.
So out of curiosity, Anne, let's say you were painting this model either for tabletop or for competition. Where would you start on this lady?
As far as starting, I would probably start with the skin and the hair.
Okay.
I mean, most of the time I do that. I just wasn't using her as a skin example. I used the little elfie chick. And also she has a little divot in the middle of her forehead. I'll have to fix that. But yeah, I usually start with the skin, but I mean, that's not the only answer. I tell people usually the two different ways to start a mini that I have seen people use are either use the skin and paint outward or choose the thing that takes up the most area on the model. So like the cape. Oh, look, we missed some green. Let's do that on a wash too. So you can see adding a drop of white to this green mixture really did make it much lighter. It's a much softer green now because we've muted it out. I do not want the paint to pool inside these recesses. I want as thin a coat as possible if I'm going to do a wash over these little curlicues. Yeah, I don't know that we have a replacement. Usually they throw it at Ed, although Sadie may get it, or who knows, All right, so we've got a bunch of different places we can do our wash now. Good deal. All right, so my wash is, I had to build a lot of sealer into it because I want it dark, but I still want it not to cover too much of this area. So we're going to be kind of experimenting here and see if washes even work on this sort of thing because that detail is just so shallow. So we'll see if our wash is dark enough by putting it on this part. Yeah, it might be. It might be. It actually brought out that curlicue pretty well. Let's see here. I'm just using a big brush to throw the wash on. I don't care if it pools. I kind of want it to pool. Remember, the purpose of the wash is to fall off the top surfaces and kind of highlight the undersurfaces. Now, right away, we're coming up with a problem. Some of these curlicues are too shallow. So the wash is kind of hitting them, but there's not enough depth there to really bring out the detail in these two little curlicues here. So wash is like, well, you could do it. You can also see the blue tone that it gives, although it does a really good job of filling in some of these other spirals.
I also like the little texture it's actually forced on the mini. Like you can kind of see where it's almost like fingerprints, maybe is the right phrasing there.
On this?
Yeah, so you see the right.
You see the little, yeah, there's little divots there. He probably tried to do even tinier spirals and they just didn't take. So you got some additional texture, which we could paint that way. Trying to freehand these tiny little spirals would be difficult even for me. Though we can try. We can certainly try. I'm going to do this again on the back. And I'm not, you notice I'm not putting a real heavy coat of wash on. I am trying to get enough pooling to bring out these spirals. But here on the back, you see the same thing, Collins. You see where he tried to do little shallow spirals, but they weren't deep enough to show up. So when you're painting this then, you can kind of choose whether to put some modeled patterns in there or to try to do a wider spiral. Since it's not really picking up a lot of detail, you could freehand a little spiral in there if you wanted to. So that, there we go. Let's get that. My shine is very, very shiny. We're very shiny today. It's a little hard to see.
Blinging.
Yeah, we're blingy. All right. So on the other side, the masochistic way, although this is a good way to increase your brush control.
Practice, practice, practice.
Is to line some of these suckers. So let's see.
I've been doing that with my towel.
Oh yeah?
It's,
do a lot of lining?
It's awful.
It is awful, especially with all the panel lines on those suckers, but it makes them look a lot better.
I've enjoyed it.
Yes, and the thing is that it increases your brush control, Collins. Did you know that lining is the best way to increase your brush control faster?
I know how to make a lot of washes out of our white paint though, because I'm like reverse stormtrooper looks. So I've done that combination of stuff for a while.
I need thin paint.
Can you bring it up just a little in?
Yeah, hold on. All right, about right there.
Yeah.
All right, so very thin paint, guys, except, well, it's got to be, all right, I'm going to say it's about a 3-to-1 paint to water, so thin it, because you need it to go on thin. You need your brush to make a really sharp tip, and you need a brush with a really sharp point. And then we are going to practice. We're going to start with the big spirals, because they're easy, relatively speaking. And the reason we're doing this, again, is that to make these suckers stand out, you really need a lot of contrast. See, my paint might even be...
Ooh, look. That's a little baby.
Yeah, that's a hard one. So get as close as we can, and we're letting the wash dry. Everybody watching is now like totally doing the wash. Let's try buffing it with our finger. See, you can see when they're just not deep enough to really get. So we'll decide what we're going to do about those.
So we're gonna do brush control and freehand today.
Yeah, it pretty much is. I mean, there's a pattern, obviously, because the spirals are there, but just get as much of it as you can. And let's see here. Well, the one up here is easy because that's a big spiral. And if you fill in a little bit of your green, if you get outside the lines, don't fret. We're going to come back in. So just try to hit it as much as you can. You do not need to be perfect. Nobody needs to be perfect. Perfection is the enemy of finishing. And for these ones that are real shallow, maybe just hit the outside rim so that you know they're there. Maybe the inside divot. But yeah, pretty much. These are, man, okay, everybody at ReaperCon, we're going to give Bobby crap about this figure this year, okay?
I do not believe that is the only Bobby figure that has some of those problems.
I wouldn't call it a problem.
Yeah,
I'd call it a feature.
That's fair. That's
a feature.
My failing choice of words, but the challenge.
It is a challenge, yeah, for sure. I'm going to suggest one over here, even though there isn't one, by just blocking in a little shadow. Could get this a little bit more. So you can't see. Some of these I'm a little messy on, some of them I'm neater on. There's one down here that's so shallow I don't think I can get it. So I'm just going to suggest the round shape and be done. And we'll see how this is a very challenging one. Very challenging one, I'll give you that. So yeah, if you want a super easy, start with a very light base coat and wash it and be done. But I would touch it up a little bit. I'm just using the blue liner now to shade around the areas. That's what I usually do when I work particulately. If I'm working in parts, I will do at least a base coat in the shadows, and then while I have my shadow color out, I will use it to line around the area. Because I've got it out, so I might as well.
And when the advantage of doing it this way versus doing it with our wash and just going over everything?
Yeah, so the wash, essentially, one, it shifted the color, because I had to use it heavy enough for it to outline all those little spirals. So it's definitely bluish and more light. It's not as rich as this green. So it shifted the color because I had to go lighter with my base coat. And I'm just going to have to go back and touch up more if I want to get it to that color. And I probably will have to glaze at the end and hope I don't lose all my spirals if I want this to be a brighter green. So really it's just like, normally I would say that it makes a little more work too, because I'm going to have to kind of repaint these sections in between if I want them to be more of less of this bluish cast. Because the wash is always going to affect the color you put it over. Now, maybe you decide you really like the color that you shifted to. In that case, you just, got hole in one because you took care of outlining those details and you don't care that you changed the color. So it really saved you work at that point. So let's see here. How would I go back? Now, the next thing to do in both cases is going to be to go back in with your midtone or slightly lighter and start highlighting, start bringing out these little things. Because now we've got the curlicues dark, but in order for them to still show up better, we need to put some light highlights on here and bring out those little coils, which is the very, very titchy brush detailing thing. I think I'll do it on the back, so we can kind of see it there. We've got a good picture of it. All right, so on this case, since I did a wash, I brought down everything. So I'm going to go back to my base coat color. I'm going to drop just a drop of water in it because I want it to be a little thinner so that my brush, remember, if I'm working with thicker paint, my brush can't come to a really good point because the thicker paint will just, it will not allow the brush to come to as fine of a point. And it also means that the paint won't come off your brush as easily if it's thicker. So we really do have to work with a bit of thinned paint at this point. I would say it is 3-to-1, just like my liner, round about there. And then I'm going to test and see if it is thick enough or if it's going to be problematic. So let's see here. I'm just going to start blocking in, and it doesn't matter even what brush stroke you use because there's so many tiny details here. So I'm really just dabbing, trying to figure out if I'm going to try to do these spirals we can't even see. The answer is probably no. I'm just going to put in some green there. If I can't see it under the wash, I'm not going to try to freehand it. I'm just going to stipple in some green.
Oh, Kuroki has the cats watching you. They seem to be very focused on the
kitties like the tiny brush and the tiny curlicues. That's funny. My cat would never watch TV with me, but he loved when I had aquariums. The aquarium was totally cat TV. All right, so we brought in, see how we brought in our highlights in there? You can see I've outlined all the little spirals now, and I've kind of just dabbed in some texture and some of those divots that looked like fingerprints. And it's fine to leave those. It can suggest that there's like just a little bit of texture in the cloth, and it's not all just curlicues. And right away, those actually start making all the curlicues stand out a little more because you've essentially given them an outside border that is lighter. And we can go up another step on that. Let me mix up another bit of that, except with more white in it. Let me grab my brush and I'll move my palette over. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, so there was our base coat color that I just thinned for highlighting. And it was 1 drop of white added to like a brushful or 2 of this. So we're going to make a second pool of this. I'm going to add a little water to my dark green just to make sure it stays viable at this point. If you're using thicker paint in your well palette, it will dry out fast. If you're using thinner paint, it's going to stay good for a long time while you're working. So that's why the well palette is very well suited for thinner paint applications. So let's go and see how light we get on that. Very light. This is a pretty color, actually. It's kind of a leaf green, pale. There we go. Now we've got 2 highlights mixed up, and I am going to do the inside of the curlicues too, but we're going to see what we can do. Yeah, you could, Beowulf. You could do it that way. It might look a little weird. We'll see. Do, 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 do. The metal version might be better. Kaz, I don't know. When the detail is this shallow, and this is a Bones Black, I believe.
It is.
So it keeps as good. It's just that in the molding process itself, like a ZBrush at some scale, like if she was printed in 54 millimeter, you'd be able to see those little spirals. Valendar. Yeah, I mean, you could do that. You could gap fill the spirals and make them circles and make your life easier. This is true. So, all right, let's see here. Let's see what I can do. I want to actually highlight the inside of some of those spirals too. So I'm going to take a deep breath and let it out, because you never take a deep breath and hold it. It would make you shake. Remember that. So you always want to paint fine details on the exhale. Boop. I just don't know. This is going to be really hard. So when I'm going to bring out these spirals, one thing I'm going to do is I'm only going to highlight toward the top and the bottom. In the middle, if I can hit that little knob. The reason is that if the light is falling from above, then it's really just going to kind of run in a line down the middle of these spirals. It's going to catch the lips at the bottom and the top. It's not really going to hit the sides of the spiral because there's no bumpy surfaces for the light to catch on. So we're going to just worry about the tops and the bottoms, which is more than enough, frankly. Let me see, I want to make sure I'm close. All right. So I'm going to try to get the middle, the bottoms. Some of these I might be able to side brush. If I have very little paint on my brush, I can kind of brush it very lightly over the top and bring out some highlights that way. Gotta be careful that I don't fill in my stuff, but see, that worked. So you can essentially get very little paint on your brush. You don't want it, it's really when you can hardly see it if you try to do a brush stroke with it. So it's almost dry brushing, but it's very controlled. And then use the side of the brush to gently stroke across the detail. That's probably going to work for these finer spirals. There we go. So that's an easier way to get highlighting around. Now look at how they stand out. They stand out very well now. Kaz, I use a crappy brush for it. I actually hate mixing paint with the butt end of the brush. I think it's just terrible. I always get paint all over myself, and I have to wipe off the brush. And it also doesn't mix as well, frankly. This mixes a lot better. This kind of thing mixes a lot better than this. It's a great habit if you've got it. If it works for you, fine. I find that this mixes everything together a lot faster, and I just use an old brush that never held a good point anyway. So yeah, although I don't know, I tried mixing with the butt end of my brush, but it's inefficient. I don't like it, so I just don't do it. Everybody has their own way that works for them, but yeah, I mean, I've got plenty of crappy brushes, so they can be my mixing brushes. They last a surprisingly long time that way. All right, now let's try to get a little bit more exact. Let's see where I can get you to see here. I'm using my brightest highlight color now. I'm going to try to hit making that spiral come out. But not too much caffeine, remember, because, you know, if it makes you shake, then that can be very frustrating. Let's see here. I'm going to touch that one up. Remember, I don't want a lot of paint on my brush, and I want it to be dark enough that I can hit that shadow. Let's see, can I draw? I can draw a really fine line that way. So yeah, the fingernail. You can see how when I remixed my paint, and it got a little thicker because it had fallen out of solution a little bit. And now I can hit little tiny things. That's what I need. It's very easy when you're doing something that's this fine to get too much paint on your brush. I wiped out my highlight a little bit. Boom. Let's see here. Let's reload. Yeah, coffee's too much for me too, Rings. I did have my tea earlier this morning. That's pretty much perfect paint consistency. Can I get, there we go. We're getting there. We're getting there. I wiped out a little bit of my line there, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm actually going to go through and highlight all of these, as much of them as I can, with my highest highlight that I just mixed. Then I'll go back and touch up if I think I need it. Let's try one of these really, really fine ones. Let's be masochists. And you're really just trying to get a tiny touch, and a tiny touch, a tiny touch, and a tiny touch. There we go. Ha-ha! And let's see, this one. You will find that you get in the zone for this, and it is best if you tackle this sort of thing when you are alert. Don't tackle it when you're tired at the end of the day. Try to tackle it if you're going to paint on a weekend. Some people get a little bit more alert after work, so after you eat dinner, that can be a good time. When I was doing the leather jacket on my Soldier 76 statue, which some of you saw at ReaperCon a couple of years ago, that has tiny micro detail like this freehanded on it. And I did it in the evening right after dinner every night because usually dinner gives me a little bit of a boost. I wanted to work on it every night, so I didn't want to just wait for the weekends. So that's starting to bring those suckers out. Look at that. They're coming out. I'm resting, you'll notice I'm resting both hands. First, I'm resting them on each other. Second, I'm resting them on the table. Shaking is something that you need to overcome by building muscle memory. So again, as your brush control gets better, you find that your shaking minimizes if you're building muscle memory. In order to build muscle memory, Twisted Oma, you gotta keep your brush in a comfortable position all the time when you're painting. Don't do that. Move the miniature rather than the brush. The brush should stay constantly at a consistent angle. At most, you want to change it 90 degrees and use a relaxed stroke. Make sure that your hand is comfortable. You do that enough while you're painting, you will build muscle memory, which will help you overcome shaking. You also just might want to look into like why you shake, like, you know, but in general, even with nervous system disorders, I have seen muscle memory trump that. So that and painting on the exhale. As I've been doing, isn't a good habit to hit all that. Yeah, breathe out, hold breath, and work the detail. Exactly what I've been doing, Liberalski, which if you've noticed, I start talking and then I pause. That's because I'm exhaled and holding the breath while I paint those tiny spirals. So it is a good technique while shooting, playing pool, throwing darts, and it works as well for this. You also need to have your, obviously your, yeah, I got a little fudgy on that one, see. You need to have your paint consistency really dialed in. You really want this like between 2 to 1 and 3 to 1 thing. You want it to, well, if you use your fingernail as a test surface, which is, you know, handy. I used to laugh at Marika for doing that, but I now paint my thumb on occasion too. At least I'm trying to demo paint consistency for you guys. It's just too handy. You want to be able to do a tiny fine line. You want that. And this is my Da Vinci Maestro Series 10 size 1, which is the only brush I would ever use for this sort of thing, as it is a perfect shape. But you can see that I'm making fine lines, but they also stand out a lot. Like you can tell that it's a pretty strong, if you did this on there, you would see a pretty strong result. You've got to see that brush stroke in order to do this fine detail. You definitely, because when you do that little tiny touch, you want it to stand out just as much as these guys are standing out. Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm no spring chicken either, Twisted Oma, and I still think that muscle memory will trump. The other thing you might try, weirdly, is some strength training, like lifting weights or at least dumbbells or resistance bands. It actually helps the neurons in your brain make connections faster and can help with things like balance and, dare I say, general coordination, which is part of this. So you may find if you start that you actually get better. Especially for when you get older, like me and a bunch of people on here. Physical fitness really does help. if you can't lose weight or, other stuff, I mean, doing some resistance band exercises is pretty low impact and can make a big impact on your quality of life. So, as usual, let's talk about lifestyle as well as painting.
They definitely can go hand in hand, so.
I think so. It's like whenever you want to... I don't listen to a lot of the talk about how, aging is going to trash you no matter what you do, because I have a friend who's in his late 80s now, who he's a German Shepherd dog guy. Met him when we first got our first Shiloh. He is more fit than most of the people that come to our shows. He can still run dogs in the ring, and I mean run. And he is one of the most fit people that I know, and he ascribes it all to diet. And he has super steady hands. He's just in tremendous shape, very sharp mentally. I just was always impressed because we met him when he was already, in his 70s, and he could definitely run rings around all the people at our dog shows. But he's still enjoying life, and he's quite old. And then I, see all these like people who are in their 80s still like doing downhill skiing at a high level, and it's not, I don't think that aging is like a definitive reason for your quality of life to go downhill. I think that a lot of what the choices we make can impact that. But that's me. And I could be wrong. I am not a doctor. I am not an expert. Oh yeah, yoga too, I bet, Tiveria. You're building core strength there, and I bet that it helps with your muscle steadiness as well. Yeah, painting dog, strength training, exactly. Well, good. I'm glad you think too. Hello, Demetrius. Oh, interesting. So essentially, he made a little tension band, Leborowski, to help with the trembling. Yeah, if you can figure out something that works that way. Ha ha ha! Mini painting studio. You are so right. Like 2 pounds of meat. Yeah, that is one thing about my older friend who is still incredibly fit, is he eats a low-protein diet. I'm actually trying that myself these days. Oh, major injuries are bad, Lord Tuan. I feel it. Yeah, repetitive. Yep. That's why that's why I adjusted my chair. Remember, guys, when I shrink at the start of every stream, I lower my chair so that I can keep a much better posture while I'm doing this. Nope, Justin, not here. It's Collins today. Yeah, lower protein Cyst of Games. Actually, it isn't. It's more plant protein and less animal protein. So I still get the adequate amount of protein that I need, although it's definitely looks lower when I look at it on my Fitbit chart. But yeah, it's counter to the American intuitiveness, because we're always taught we don't get enough protein, but I'm starting to doubt that. I feel so much better after starting this diet. Sometimes all the research I have to wonder who it's coming from. Like, is it the Meat Council?
That's always a thing. Like,
yeah.
You never know who's actually doing the research and what their goals are when they start the research. Because so much of the stuff is just non-objective based information. Right.
I mean, and there are plenty of food companies out there funding their own research to prove their own points, right? And it may be true in a vacuum, but if you look at it in the bigger picture, it's kind of suspect. So yeah, you got to kind of look, always with a grain of salt, I think. And try it, and everything works differently for everybody, so I never take any study as gospel anymore. I just try it and see if it works for me. I do like there to be actual research behind things, but I'm not going to try something just because somebody says it works, But yeah, the diet I'm on is the Plant Paradox program, and it's all about rebuilding your gut biome. So it's high vegetable, lower meat protein, higher veggie protein. Which is, it's weird because it's like, for me, I'm doing it kind of a keto diet, but you don't have to do it keto. But it actually is giving me better results than my keto diet did, and I've already lost 2 pounds in the first week. So far I like it. just going to touch up some of these little bits that I fuzzed out. See, and you also notice that as I've been doing this, I hope you've noticed, my brush control has gotten better. Like I started out making a lot of blorfs, and by the time I'm doing the end parts here, I'm making very few mistakes. In fact, I just went in and touched up that mistake with no problem. So, yeah, Bishop, definitely. Yeah, I have. I mean, you have to have at least a little bit of salt on the keto diet because it keeps things moving along. Because I am not eating any processed foods. I'm making all my own food at this point. As far as I cook stuff, I bake stuff, and you know, everything is. A lot of things are whole foods for me. I don't buy prepackaged, pre-processed food anymore.
I like Whole Foods. It's a great place.
It is, and it will hurt your budget so badly. So, all right, so here we are. Now we've got pretty much a lot of highlights come in and a little bit of stippling. I think I need a little bit more there. Then I'm going to say, well, darn it, but I'm very sad. I wanted this to be a brighter green, so I'm actually going to glaze right after I finish hitting up some of these little areas around the little spirals I could not quite get. Although, even those, I can kind of suggest them. In fact, let's try to at least do an outline over here. We can see this divot for sure. And it is kind of a hole otherwise without a little spiral. So if I can, I'll at least make a little circle and suggest a spiral to break up the area. All right, there. Now, yeah, the curly cues are interesting. And like I said, excellent way to build brush control. And just like my brush control got better as I practiced on this, if you're going to do something like this, guys, get out a mini that has not quite so fine of detail and work on your brush control and then do this, because you will warm up just like I warmed up, so that you are trying this stuff at the peak of your ability instead of in a trough. So practice, warm-up practice for this sort of thing, just like for athletic activity, very important. You're using your muscles, you're using them at a very, very fine, delicate way, in a very fine, delicate way. And so it still requires a lot of your body to do something this fine. There we go. And just like I said before, and now that I've got very little paint on my brush, I might be able to do a side brush technique on these, where I just kind of brush it over the top, and as long as the paint is not too thin and not too much on my brush, it should bring out some of these spirals. And then we can do a glaze. Yeah, there we go. So very light. And I'm not ruining my brush like it would be with dry brushing, because you can see how controlled this is, and my paint isn't dry. It's not drying in my brush. So we have curlicues and kind of a soft, kind of almost crushed velvet type texture back there. All right, I want it brighter though, so let's get some Naga green and glaze. Yeah, you never want to get frustrated. Like, honestly, if you get frustrated, just put the mini aside, take a 10-minute break, go back to it. Have a snack, do something like that. Refresh yourself. Because frustration is what we were aiming not to have. Frustration is the hobby killer. We want to have fun with this stuff. Ooh, thanks for the sub, Daily.
Ooh, yay. We're at 3 so far, so keep them coming, folks.
Woohoo.
We're trying to hit that 30.
Yeah, Sig Wolf, good idea. Good idea. Having a warm-up. Yeah, when I work on my competition stuff, I usually start out working on one of the bigger, broader areas that's not as demanding before I move to a very demanding part of the model. Because I know that it takes me 15 minutes to half an hour to really get locked in to the zone, get my hands used to the motion. Okay, so my glaze is colored water, although I'm keeping it a little stronger this time because I want it to be vibrant. So this is just Naga green. You can see how bright it is by itself. I'm going to add a little more water. I want it around a 1-to-1. Usually you want to go lighter rather than heavier with a glaze, because you can always put another layer on. So that's about where I am. I've got, this way I know if I brush it over the surface, it's going to color it just this much, and I can wick it off pretty easily, but it's going to put just a gentle filter over the whole thing. I just want this a little brighter. because originally I wanted a brighter green. So if I'm going to do the glaze then, I want to get a bigger brush so I can cover the whole surface quickly. So I'll use my Da Vinci, this would be like a Reaper size 1 Kolinsky, would be the equivalent. And I'm going to get a full, it's going to be, see I've got a lot of paint on the brush, and I'm just going to brush it over the top. And I'm going to come back, rinse out my brush, squeeze the water out of it, and then come back and just kind of dab the excess off. I don't want this to pool. If it pools, it's going to dry funny because it's so thin. I may have gotten a little bit too much there. There we go. That makes our green more intense. Excellent. Yes, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Trouble. I didn't go looking for trouble, but I found trouble in my stream. Ooh. Man, there's just so many bad puns can be made with your name. So this has brightened up our green a bit. You can see it's a more lively color now. It's not as pale as it was. So you can do that. You can start out with a very pale color so that you can get all your little details in, and then glaze with a rich and saturated color. It really, I mean, I do all my glazes this way, Chaos Emperor. If I'm glazing a big surface, I use a huge brush. And anything else, I just try to use a large enough brush that it can carry enough paint. And that means usually a thicker brush rather than a thinner one, right? This one's really thin, so it's not a very good glazing brush. Anything thicker where I can just slobber the paint on and just wick it off, leave it in a nice even layer. And there you go. So let's see, I wonder if I used some dungeon slime for further highlights, if I could intensify, but still keep my intense green in, but still get a highlight on. So dungeon slime, as everybody knows, is a wonderful color, possibly the best color in Bones, in my opinion. Dungeon slime. Everyone should own dungeon slime. If you do not own dungeon slime, I expect you to go out and buy it. It is a great green highlight color. It has excellent coverage. It's a lovely highlight color for any yellowy green. And I'm going to try to use it, just put a few more highlights on the back of this. Oh, good, HM Red Dog. I'm glad you got your brushes. Fantastic. Try them out. Give them a run. Remember to be nice to them and not put them in your paint water. Or not let them sit in your paint water, I should say. You want to clean them. Other tips for good brush handling would be to rinse your brush frequently. Don't let your paint get too tacky in there. And to only dip a little bit of your paint, or your brush in the paint. As you can see on my brush, I'm only dipping about half of it in the paint. That keeps the paint from getting up in the ferrule here, which is what causes poofy brushes. The paint gets up there and dries and makes your brush poof, and it doesn't want to keep a good tip anymore. One thing you will notice about natural haired brushes is when they dry out, they may look kind of poofy and like all over the place. If you see them like this, it does not matter. One, if it bothers you, just, put some conditioner in them when you're done painting and it'll hold them in a nice point. More to the point, it doesn't matter what the brush looks like dry. It matters what the brush looks like wet. So if you can wet your brush and still get a good tip, and this one's starting to get beat up. You can see the tip's a little bit off. So this is a very old brush. You can tell it's worn down. But as long as it still keeps a good tip, your brush is fine, no matter what it looks like dry.
Keeping a good tip is important.
It is. This show is full of good tips.
But not just tips. We do plenty of other things.
We do a lot of other things. Alrighty. Let's see here. I'm just going to try to hit some of these things with this really vibrant yellow. Just some of the deeper and bigger spirals, I think. That is definitely getting us more yellowy, see? So let's see here. I kind of like this. I'm going to see if I can stipple some, just add some texture around these spirals, some highlights. There is a little bit of texture in various areas. This paint is probably thinned about 3 to 1 paint to water. Here we are. Put a little bit over here. Missing some highlighting around here. And that's gotten us brighter. That looks cool. That's almost like a green glass color. Yeah, it looks kind of velvety. That's the stippling, which I like, Corinnico. I think it works. I'm sure your brain went exactly the way that Collins's brain went, Trouble.
What? There's no way.
Collins' brain is unique. Nobody can emulate the Collins brain.
Yeah.
Probably a good thing for the world.
It is definitely a positive.
What's our time at, Mr. Collins?
I was just getting ready to say we're about 5 till the hour.
Oh, well then we gotta, then let me just finish one little, and obviously you could bring up the highlights higher on this if you wanted, but I'm pretty happy with it. Too much paint. Okay, so that's what happens when you have too much paint on your brush. You get a blob and you have no control. Take your brush, rinse it out, come back, dab that off. The nice thing about getting a blob like that is that it's full of paint, so it's very wet, and so it won't dry right away. So you can go rinse out your brush, squeeze the water out like I did, and just gently nudge it off. But that is the sign. If you are getting blobs and not thin lines, you have too much paint on your brush. Take it off. Dab it on the side of your palette. Get that stuff out of there. You want control. So yeah. Little bits, little taps. There we go. I think we're looking okay. Definitely not for the faint of heart. But yeah, again, if you guys want an easy trick, when you got your brush at about that level, you can use the side of it and just gently go over with the side of the brush to try to pick up some of that really shallow detail. I almost have too little moisture in my brush here, so you gotta be careful. You don't want paint to dry in your brush. You want control, and you don't want too much paint on your brush. But if you get the right amount, you can just side brush over some of this stuff and bring it up a little bit more. There we go. It's a little bit better. It does leave a little texture sometimes reminiscent of dry brushing, but that's kind of why I did the stippling effect on here, so you get more of a velvety effect. But there we go. This one that I'm using right now is the number 1 Da Vinci. The one that I was using earlier is close to a number 0 Reaper. I think that's about it. But yeah, I mean, if you were doing this with a Reaper brush, I would do it with the Aught 10. That one is, I think, fine enough and small enough. The shorter a brush, the more control you have. At this point in my life, a longer brush is fine for me. I would never get longer than this. This Da Vinci is quite long for its breadth, but I do like it for doing tiny, tiny detail. All right, so I think we're toward the end. Thank you we got 3 subs today toward our goal, right, Collins?
That is what I tracked.
All right, that's what I tracked too. So, all right.
Oh, bam.
We're fine. Face cam. Be ready, Anne. So we have a little wizard with curly cues. That was like probably more intensive than my brain wanted to tackle today, but I was like, what do I want to do? That. So yes, here we are. So any questions, you guys, on painting fine sculpted detail? Remember, you want your shadows, the darks to be dark and the lights to be light in order for those things to stand out. Otherwise, if you don't have enough contrast, those little details will not stand out at all. Let's see. Anything? No questions? No? All right. Everybody's tired like me. They're all like, absorb the end show, absorb it. Mesmerizing, is that it? Nobody was talking because everybody was staring at tiny curly cues. You know, that is supposed to be meditative. Like focusing on tiny details and things, it can kind of take your mind off like all your stress. I used to use that technique. All right. That's all right, Albavezin. It'll be up on the VOD.
VOD, and then shortly after YouTube.
Should I have done a hypnotoad instead with tiny circles?
Yeah.
Done the hypnotic circles? Spirals, yes. Thank you, everybody. Hey, Chinner, you just missed us. I just did a bunch of tiny, tiny spirals. Tiny. Yeah, it is pretty zen. You get in the zone, then you forget to eat and annoy your friends and loved ones who wish that they had eaten an hour ago.
Hypnotoad.
All glory to the Hypnotoad.
Well,
alrighty. I think that seems like, yeah, super. And yeah, we'll see you guys again. Oh, actually, today, I believe, although I have to check with Ed, today on Ed's show, I think he and I are doing an announcement. So I will double check with him, and maybe not. He may show up, and it may just be Ed.
Special news.
But yeah, special news today at 3 p.m.
Awesome. And Anne, if people wanted to see more of your stuff,
oh yeah, thanks for the reminder, Collins. Also, hey guys, I've got a Patreon, and many of you are on it. Thank you so much for supporting. My Patreon is patreon.com/paintingbig, one word. And I do all sorts of awesome PDFs. I do video content that is supported by PDFs. I do PDFs about paints and colors and all that fun stuff. And yeah, we have a good time. And hopefully you guys can check it out. I have some free content up there and a listing of what I did last year, so you can see if it's the kind of subject matter you're interested in.
Bloop. I found the link. I dropped the link.
Oh, there it is. Good job, Collins gives us. Yes, many of you already support me, and I adore you. Thank you so much. You have no idea how much it means to me. So yeah.
Sweet. I found someone to raid.
Who are we raiding?
Now I will warn the chat. I've never seen this person, so we're going in this blind. But he was doing some ZBrush, and his name had Titan in it.
Okay.
Tytan.
Okay.
So, that's I'm kind of excited about
okay. So ZBrushing. So he probably has no idea this would be coming then.
All right, I'm pushing the
start
button.
Push the button. Bye guys. Have a great day. Be awesome. Spread the Reaper love. Okay.
I'm pushing the outro button.
I will see you all later.